Hey, fifth grade, welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about Jamestown. Now, hard to remember, I think we did a tiny bit about Jamestown before we left. So if you have your red folder, you may have in your red folder either a double-sided paper that had a Venn diagram or kind of like that more of like a chart thing on the back. We're going to do a compare and contrast. So, pull that up if you feel like it. And I do not remember what kind of text we were looking at, but we're going to use this one. I think this would be a good, straightforward one to use. So this is from our same History Alive or Socialize Alive text. Um, it's about the Jamestown colony. So I'm going to read it to you, but I'm also going to be posting an entire document with all three colonies in it that you can read or reread on your own. I'm doing this as like an option. Okay, so Jamestown colony. So again, within my History Alive account, I can do a couple things. I can highlight um, which I might use in a minute. It also will let me do main ideas, which I always think is interesting to see when you think about what is this text really about. And we talked about that a lot in science, but thinking about what's this really about and like what are the details that support that big idea. So we'll go ahead and click that so we can see these in a minute. Okay. In 1606, England was ruled by King James I. So remember, this is about 20 years after um, the failure of the colony of Roanoke. And now there's Queen Elizabeth I was the queen then, and they were at war with Spain. They defeated Spain, and now her distant relative King James I has become king. The English people did not choose him as their leader because England was a monarchy, a government in which the ruler inherits his or her own power. During this time, King James I gave a group of wealthy men permission to start a colony in North America. The group sent 105 men to settle in Virginia. They hoped a colony would make them richer. Now we see this is highlighted in blue as being like one of the main ideas. The settlers arrived in Virginia in May of 1607, hoping to find gold. They chose a place near a river where the deep water allowed them to anchor their ships close by. The site was upriver from the Chesapeake Bay, but far enough from the river that the Spanish ships could not easily attack the settlement. Located on a peninsula, the town would be easily defended by the land. The group built a settlement enclosed by the walls of a fort and named it Jamestown, in honor of King James I. Now, if you remember anything about that, you'll remember that the site they chose ended up being a bad one. And we'll find out a little bit more about that in the next paragraph. I might show you guys that map again. I'll show it to the end that I showed you yesterday. Unfortunately, the settlers built Jamestown on a marsh. The water around the town was dirty and salty, and the land was bad for farming. Worse still, mosquitoes in the marsh carried a deadly disease called malaria. And by the end of 1607, disease and other hardships had killed many of the settlers. So again, this kind of recurring theme of like bad choices, bad decisions, failures, like what's going well, what doesn't go well. For Roanoke, nothing works out. But Jamestown, after lots of repeated failures, they are going to have some success. In late 1607, some American Indians captured a Jamestown settler named Captain John Smith. They took Smith to their chief, Powhatan. According to the story of Smith later told, the chief was about to kill him when Powhatan's young daughter, Pocahontas, saved his life. Many historians, however, think the Smith's life was never really in danger. So this is a big, kind of controversial now section. And we think about like how the Indians really felt about the invasion, really of the colonists. Like this is really just the perspective of the Europeans themselves. If you're interested in more about this topic, I could definitely point you in the direction of reading more about that. After this incident, Pocahontas visited Jamestown several times. She and her people brought food to trade with the few surviving colonists. In 1608, more than more men arrived from England. Many had come to seek gold, so there were not enough people growing the food needed to feed the colony. In September, John Smith became the new leader of the colony. He knew that the settlement would not survive he knew that the settlement needed everyone's help to survive. He said that any man who would not work to maintain Jamestown would not eat. Smith's leadership helped save the colony. I always equate this to the show Survivor. I don't know how many of you still watch that show or have ever watched the show. But on that one, like, people were always like lying around on the beach, like complaining and whining about food and whatever. And John Smith comes in and says, if you don't work, you don't eat, right? If everyone isn't contributing something to help, then no one gets to benefit. This was another group of people who came, like the Roanoke settlers, and they really didn't know how to farm or survive. Again, failures, right? Poor decisions, unprepared. We can see like a recurring theme amongst all of these colonies. In the summer of 1609, a new group of settlers arrived, including women and children. The next month, Smith returned to England after having been badly burned by an explosion of gunpowder. The colonists had lost a strong leader. To make matters worse, Powhatan stopped trading with them. Local tribes attacked the people they found outside the settlement. The winter of 1609 to 1610 was known as the starving time. Many settlers had to eat horses and dogs. Hundreds of people died. Only 60 settlers survived in Jamestown. The Jamestown settlers never found gold, therefore they needed another way to support their colony. Colonist John Rolfe learned how to grow a new kind of tobacco. The settlers planted this cash crop. Oh, one of your vocabulary words. Does it let me highlight it? Let's see. No, I guess not. In 1614, they began to trade their tobacco for money and supplies. People in England loved it. Tobacco became Virginia's gold. So they don't find, gold and riches they planned to find, but they did find this or cultivated this new kind of tobacco, which would become, right, this huge cash crop, vocabulary word, and be the thing that will save the colony. Now, don't forget, there are a bunch of Johns here we've mentioned quite a few times, and certainly it's a common name, or it was, and not as much for you guys as your generation, but John White was the leader at Roanoke. John Smith was this leader here in Jamestown. John Rolfe is the one that figures out about tobacco, so you got to keep all of these Johns straight. Okay, let's continue here. Meanwhile, Powhatan's people worried about so many settlers coming to their land, and rightfully so. Let's talk about this, right? This piece about how natives saw ownership and use of land differently is a big issue. In 1614, John Rolfe married Pocahontas, and for a time, the colonists and the American Indians were at peace. Pocahontas even went to England and met King James. Before she could return, though, she got sick in 1617 and she died. That's part of the plot of that Pocahontas 2, if you own that on DVD. Meanwhile, Jamestown was growing and changing. In 1619, the men elected representatives to make laws for the colony. This was the first representative government in America, in the American colony. The people chose their leaders in the government. The people chose their leaders. Guys, this is so important. They called the governing body of the House of Burgesses. A burgess is an English word for an elected representative. So we've got a few vocab words in here for us. Only landowners could have the job, but now Virginia's government was more democratic than even in England. So keep an eye on that word landowner too, that you have to own land or own property to be able to vote. That's going to be a qualifier for a while. When Powhatan died, his brother became chief, and the peace between the American Indians and the settlers ended. In 1622, the new chief and his men attacked Jamestown and killed 347 colonists. But Jamestown survived to become the first successful English settlement in North America. I wish I could spend more time with you talking more about this Native American piece, because I think it's an important one for us to think about. The standard, though, is asking us to kind of think about just this European side of this. But guys, don't forget who was really here first, who really discovered these places, and who was really, really right or wrong, maybe about how the land was taken. All right, let's do a quick check for understanding. Select 3 problems that Jamestown colonists faced. Did they face the soil was bad for farming and there was lots of mosquitoes that carried malaria? Yep, they did, because that land was all marshy, so that place where they chose to have their colony wasn't a very good one. Did American Indians group attack and kill this many people? I think they did. The colony never produced anything of value, so it was always poor. Well, that doesn't sound very true. This might be true. What about this last one? John Smith was injured and had to return to England. Yes, and this was a problem because John Smith was a good, solid leader for them. So when he left, things got worse. So I'm going to go with A, B, and D. Let's check. All right, cool. So this is, I guess, a picture supposed to show John Rolfe or somebody tending to this new kind of tobacco. Okay, so that is our Jamestown section for today. And I may add in another piece after this. I think maybe I'll just combine it with something else. Okay, so just maybe keep practicing your vocab. I might add a little vocab practice video for you, and keep thinking about trying to maintain these information in the different things we talked about. Okay, talk to you soon.